Hey everyone, and welcome back to Poetry, Foundation for Creative Writing. We're continuing with sound repetition. Now, leading up to this point, I've talked about how poetry is more than just end rhyme. I think that's what we're most familiar with, the rhymes at the end of the verses. But we've seen so far that sound repetition is more than just end rhyme. Alliteration, the beginning sounds of words, and assonance, the repetition of vowel sounds, and consonants, the repetition of consonant sounds. But we're going to get to rhyme, because rhyme is really the repetition of a sound that we see in a word, and it particularly occurs in the last syllables of verses, and it's the most popular type of rhyme. We're going to look at 3 poems here because we're going to see what rhyming does. It does more than just makes the poem sing-songy. Rhyme ties ideas together. And we have to be, one thing to be cautious about. I'm going to give you 2 cautions. One is you really have to think ahead of time about your rhyme. If you're writing in a particular format, like a sonnet, where it has to rhyme, you need to use words that you know that you can rhyme, right? But at the same time, we want to choose to use words that aren't cheesy. There's certain words out there. I'm going to think of the word love. Love, there's very few words that rhyme with love, like above, dove, and those types of words that it just almost seems sort of cheesy. So we want to steer away from cheesy rhymes. So let's take a look at 3 poems here. We'll begin with one that we've already looked at, which is Holy Sonnet 14, John Donne. Listen to the rhymes at the end of the words here. Batter my heart, 3-person God, for you. As yet but knock, breathe, shine, and seek to mend, that I may rise and stand, or throw me and bend. Your force to break, blow, burn, and make me new. I, like an usurped town to another do, labor to meet you, but oh, to no end. Reason your viceroy in me should defend, but is captive and proves weak or untrue. Yet dearly I love you and would be loved fain, but am betrothed unto your enemy. Divorce me, untie or break that knot again. Take me to you, imprison me, for I accept you enthrall me, never shall be free, nor ever chaste, except you ravish me. Now, the way that we talk about end rhymes is that we use letters to do it. So as we look here, we see you. So I'm going to put an A here because you is the first rhyme that we see. Men does not rhyme with you, so I'm going to put a B here. But bend does rhyme with mend. So far our rhyme scheme is ABB. So when we talk about rhyme scheme, oftentimes we'll talk about it in terms of letters. So we see like, oh, it's A, B, A, B, C, D, C, D, E, F, E, F, G, G. So that's a Shakespearean sonnet, for example. But that, this is to help you understand that. So you, mend, bend, new. You and new rhymes, so we'll go back to an A. So far we have an ABBA rhyme scheme. And then we see do, right? Do rhymes with new and you, so we'll put an A. End rhymes with mend, bend. And defend also rhymes with those. Untrue. And then we introduce a new rhyme, and that is feign. And we come back to, let's see, you, feign, enemy, E. We haven't had that yet, so that's going to be D. Again. Again is sort of an off rhyme. So again and feign are meant to rhyme together. We call that kind of an off rhyme, where the words kind of go together, kind of sound like the same sort of rhyme. And we're going to continue here. I is a new one. E. And free, we have free. True enemy, free. So we'll go with a D. And me. So this is neat. ABBA, ABBA, CD, C, E, D, D. Now, what rhyme does is it ties things together. So we're tying tying these ideas together, or overlapping them here with the B's. We're getting to the C's here, and then the D's wrap it up. Use end rhyme to do this, right? To tie your poems together. Now, as you're writing poetry, when we get to our form poetry, end rhyme is a necessity. And we'll talk about how the different schemes of rhyme, because each poem has a different scheme that it has to follow. So in some ways, you'll be forced to do end rhymes. But keep that in mind, that you want to use words that can be repeated throughout, or words or rhymes that can be repeated out. You, knew, do. So you kind of have to think ahead of time of this. All right, well, let's continue to the next poem, and that's the one that we've already looked at as well, Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening by Robert Frost. Whose woods these are I think I know. His house is in the village, though he will not see me stopping here to watch his woods fill up with snow. My little horse must think it queer to stop without a farmhouse near, between the woods and frozen lake, the darkest evening of the year. He gives his harness bells a shake to ask if there is some mistake. The only other sound's the sweep of easy wind and downy fake. The woods are lovely, dark, and deep, but I have promises to keep and miles to go before I sleep, and miles to go before I sleep. Take a look at what we have here in this poem. It's really neat. We're going to begin with our rhyme scheme. We're going to go no and though rhyme. That's an AA, and then B for here, and then back to A for snow. So A, B, A, and then we have queer. Queer rhymes with here. So we're introducing the B rhyme here in stanza 1, but then we're continuing it in stanza 2. So queer, near, and year, and then lake would be C. So like you would expect, the third line of the previous stanza begins the rhyme of the next one. Shake, mistake, and flake, and now we introduce a new one, sweep. And then on the last line, or the last stanza, we are repeating that sound over and over again. So this is a really neat way to tie the poem together. A, B, A, and then it goes B, B, C, B, and then C, C, D, C, and D, 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 D. So what a beautiful poem. Now, there's another thing that I want to point out in end rhymes. I think sometimes our tendency is when we get to the end of the line of poetry, we're just going to stop, right? I think some of the most effective poems continue. So it's almost like, yeah, we do hear the rhyme, but the rhyme seems to kind of lend itself to the next phrase. So my little horse must think it queer. And so instead of saying my little horse must think it queer, and then a whole new thought, a new sentence or whatever, he's continuing the thought. My little horse must think it queer to stop without a farmhouse near, between the woods and frozen lake, the darkest evening of the year. Sometimes this is intentional, and you'll notice that in some cases they have semicolons and periods and commas after the line, but notice they don't have anything here. And I think any way that you can make your rhymes sort of disappear in a paragraph, so as they're reading, it's just like they continue going on. I think that's a really effective way to use end rhyme. Let's take a look at one more, and that is Do Not Go Gentle Into That Good Night by Dylan Thomas. Do not go gentle into that good night. Old age should burn and rave at close of day. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. Though wise men at their end know dark is right, because their words had forked no lightning, they do not go gentle into that good night. Good men, the last wave by, crying how bright their frail deeds might have danced in a green bay, rage, rage against the dying of the light. Wild men who caught and sang the sun in flight, and learned too late they grieved it on its way, do not go gentle into that good night. Grave men near death, who see the blinding sight, blind eyes could blaze like meteors and be gay, rage, rage against the dying of the light. And you, my father, there on the sad height, curse, bless me now, with your fierce tears I pray. Do not go gentle into that good night. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. So a couple things that we see here. This is, first of all, this is called a V&L. It's a type of poem. We'll actually be writing this. And a VNL does something very unique. We begin with this line, do not go gentle into the good night. We repeat it in the second stanza. We repeat it at the end of the fourth stanza, and we repeat it there in the sixth stanza. And then you see this, rage, rage against the dying of the light. We do the same thing. We repeat it throughout the poem. So these two lines repeat, and the idea of VNL is that here's the rhyme scheme. It's A, I should use a different pen color here, B, A, B, A, B, A, and then throughout. So when I said, hey, when you're doing end rhyme, you need to make sure to use words that can rhyme. Yeah, a VNL you definitely need to, because you're using these same words throughout. The same rhyme, the same sound throughout. So you need to be cautious about what words you choose, and I think that's important as you're writing. A lot of times when I write, I will think of the first line, and I think about where that line ends, and now I have to that word. What is the last word of that line? And now I have to rethink. Okay, is that word going to have a good rhyme to it? So it just takes some thinking about as you get going. Night and day and light, those sounds are very popular in the English language, which makes it easy to write a VNL with those sounds. Now, one other thing I want to show you, this technique that he uses. Let's see. Second stanza. Remember how I talked about how we don't want just to continuously end the thought at the end of the rhyme, but if we can make a continuous rhyme so that the phrasing just continues sort of seamlessly, it's more powerful. So take a look at second stanza. The wise men at their end know dark is right, because the words that fork no lightning, they do not go gentle into that good night. So it makes it so it's not so sing-songy, where we're continuing to say, do not go gentle into that good night. Here he says, because the words that fork no lightning, they do not go gentle into that good night. And it gives it this continuous legato to it, and breaks up that sing-songy effect. I think you want to move away from the sing-songy effect in poetry. So hopefully we have learned here from these poets, from Robert Frost and from Dylan Thomas and from John Donne, about how rhyme, end rhyme specifically, is so important in poetry. But remember, this is not the most important thing. This is not the only thing to poetry. There's so much more to it. There's the repetition of sounds, like alliteration and assonance and consonants. And now we're just repeating the same sound at the end of the line. So use these techniques together to work on your writing and to develop your skills.